discuss the real estate down payment structure. If you're buying a house and you're living there, which is considered as your primary residence, you'll require the following minimum amount as your down payment. 5% of the amount up to $500,000, 10% of the balance between $500,000 to $1 million, 20% of the amount over $1 million. However, if it's not your primary residence, then most lenders will consider this as an investment property and would require 20% down payment. When I was in the process of purchasing a house and speaking to various financial experts, I found it very hard to keep track of the various amounts required depending on the cost of the house. As a result, I decided to create a spreadsheet to assist me with the calculations and provide me with an overall picture of the amounts needed. Let me share this with you today. Here on row 7, I have the cost of the property ranging from $100,000 all the way up to $800,000. On row 9, I have the down payment required, the legal fees on row 11, the legal fees plus down payment on row 13, row 15 is the mortgage insurance, and row 18 is the total mortgage required. Now you see on row 15 here I have outlined as a mortgage insurance. So the rule is in Canada, if you don't put more than 20% down on your mortgage, you're required to pay a mortgage loan insurance. This is calculated at the bank or at the lender when you go for a loan and you only put in less than 20% down. So here let me outline how much it will cost you if your property costs $100,000. So your property is $100,000, 5% of 100 is $5,000. Here the legal fees, so talking in Ontario we mention it as closing costs, Quebec notary fees, but basically it's the amount you'll pay a lawyer to go over your documents and officially registered your property to the government. So approximately this cost is about 1.5 the amount of the cost of the property. Now here it has 1,500. Here this is the amount that I add between row 9 and row 11. So basically this is the minimum down payment plus the legal fees, and this is approximately 6,500. The reason why I add this row here is because normally you'll hear a lot of people says, hey, yeah, buy a house and you only need 5% down, but they don't mention to you about the legal fees that you may be required. So you think, okay, yeah, I have 10,000 down and okay, sure, I can buy a house, with the 10,000 down, but they forget to tell you about the legal fees. So here I add the legal fees, which is plus the down payment, so give you an overall amount that you need to save when you're going to purchase a house of 100,000. Now for the mortgage insurance, basically the mortgage insurance is a percentage of the cost of the property. The higher the cost of the property, obviously the higher the mortgage loan insurance. So what happens basically is you would take the down payment from the cost of the property, which would be $95,000 in this case, and you will have to add back $3,800 to it, which would require you to get a loan or a mortgage loan from the bank or the lender of a total amount of $98,800. So here if you have a house of 150, here you have a 5% down payment of 7,500. The legal fees will be approximately 2,250. The legal fees plus the down payment amount would be about 9,750. The mortgage loan insurance would be that amount, so it would be 7,500 from that one, plus the 5,700 would be a total of 148,200. Now let's jump all the way to approximately 500. Now if you have a house about 500,000, or you plan to purchase a house of 500,000 with 5% down, that would require 25,000 down payment. The legal fees would be approximately about 7,500. Now, if you add this 25 plus the 75, you get a total of 32,500. So that's the amount that you're going to approximately have to save if you're planning to buy a house of 500,000. And then, even though you take away the 25 down payment from the 500,000, which would be equal to 475, you need to re-add the 19,000 for the mortgage loan insurance, and that would total up to 494,000. So that's the mortgage that the lender or the bank would have you sign when you're buying a house of that caliber. Now, if you go up to 800,000, you will require a down payment of 55,000. The legal fees will be approximately about 12,000. Now the legal fees plus the down payment is about 67,000, and the mortgage insurance is about 29,800. So you will require a loan of 774,800. So all of this calculation is to show you basically if you decide to buy a property of any of these values with a minimum down payment of 5,000. Basically, the other thing that you have to take into consideration is basically if you buy a house 500,000 or less, then it's 5% of whatever the total is. Anything over between 500,000 and a million, basically it would be 10% of the difference. So basically here, for a house which is 550, basically will be 25,000 for the amount of 500,000, and then you need to subtract 550 from 500, which would be 50,000, and then you take 10% of that. So 10% of 50,000 is 5,000, so you need to add 5,000 plus the 25 here. That's why I get 30,000. So that's how the formula works. So this is basically the calculation showing you for 5% down payment. Now if you're buying a property and you put in 20% down, here I'll give you the same kind of value. So here is, you'll see on row 7 the cost of the property from about 100 to 750, the 20% down payment required, the legal fees plus down payment. Here you will see that I omit the mortgage loan insurance, because basically the rule in Canada is if you put 20% down or more, you don't need to pay mortgage loan insurance. So let's go over this. If you're buying a house of 100,000, you take 20% of that. You have a 20% down payment, right? So 20% of 100,000 is 20,000, and the legal fees is still around the 1,500. Now you would require approximately about 21,500 between down payment and legal fees. That's the amount you have to save. However, your mortgage required would be only 80,000. So like on the other page where you put 5% down, right, you will need 98,800. If you put 20% down, now your mortgage is actually just the 8,000. It will be the 20,000 minus the 100. Let's go over to an amount of 500,000. If you buy a house of 500,000, the amount required with the 20% down payment is 100,000. The legal fees is about 7,500. So this is an approximate value based on 1.5% of the cost of the property. That's an average. All right. Now legal fees plus down payment would be about 107,500. So that's the amount you will need to save. And once you minus the 100,000 from the 500,000, you will get your mortgage you will get from the lender would be only 400,000. Now the same for if you have a house of 750, your 20% down payment would be 150. Your legal fees would be around 11,250, and you'll need to save approximately 161,250 in order to cover all the different costs between the down payment and the legal fees, and minus the 150 from 750, you get an approximate mortgage of 600,000. So this is just to give you an overview basically if whether the difference between putting down 5% and the difference between putting down 20% on a house. I hope that helps, and see you in the next video.